Welcome to another edition of the Up and Down. I'm here with Frank Brank, a.k.a. the man who had Adam Scott last week at Riviera, and yours truly, Friday Paulie. Here to talk about the WGC event this week in Mexico. There's also another PGA Tour event in Puerto Rico. Some of the odds for that have been posted, but as the week goes on, you're going to see more and more bets for that event coming out. But we're going to focus on this show for the WGC Mexico, as that's the bigger event this week, and we want to keep this video to maybe about half an hour length. So how's it going, Frank?
Good, man. Good week last week. Scott was trending nicely into last year. He's coming off the win in Australia. The numbers liked him, even though he hadn't really played much over here since. But it's a ball striker's paradise. At one point, halfway through his round on Sunday, he was losing strokes putting and winning the event by 2 strokes. It's kind of crazy how Riviera plays. It's almost unlike any course that I've seen. With the slopes and the greens and the being on the wrong sides of the pins and some of those bunkers, it's so impressive. It's kind of similar to Augusta, I guess, in a way, but it's like a longer Augusta, I guess. But that was fun to watch. A very, very interesting finish. Everyone pretty much fell apart at the end trying to chase, and Scott just kind of held it together good enough to win.
Yeah, Riviera it's a ball striker's paradise, right? If you're hitting the ball well, you can get rewarded with a lot of 15-foot birdie putts. If you're not hitting it well, and you decide to play a little bit too aggressive, well, guess what? You're making bogeys, doubles, triples, taking 5 shots out of a bunker. That happens, right? So
Yep.
It's really a good course. It's one of those you kind of wish they had played almost more than once a year, because you tend to have really good Sundays there in terms of it's hardly ever is there a blowout winner at Riviera because the score is so condensed, because it's really tough to go low multiple rounds. So you end up having on Sunday, we're headed to the back nine on Sunday. We got 10 guys within 4 shots of the lead. Let's go now, right? And you see the same thing at Augusta usually too, right? Where it's a kind of a condensed leaderboard, and somebody can make a move in the back nine and come from 4 behind to win possibly, because you can make bogeys, but if you're doing well, you can also make birdies. You can birdie a 10th hole, you can make double a 10th hole. Right, and that's what makes kind of a really good golf course.
Yeah, and the 10th hole, speaking specifically, you saw some of those guys like Kuchar and Varner. That's where their round changed.
Yep.
Right, Varner laid way back, missed the green, and he was screwed. I as soon as he hit that shot, I was like, he's done. He can't. There's no way he gets up and in. He probably trying hard time to make a bogey there.
Yeah, I mean, but that's just kind of a nerve thing, and even a minute afterwards, right? I mean, it happens to the best of them.
Yeah, I just wish there were more courses like that, like Riviera. It's so impressive to watch, so fun to watch.
Yeah, exactly. So, what are your thoughts this week on the course that we have down here in Mexico?
Yeah, altitude, right? The ball flies here. DJ's won here a bit. It certainly favors guys who can drive the ball far, because there's a handful of greens that you can get close to off the tee if you can hit some balls, 350 yards in the air, like Rory and DJ and some of these guys will do. I remember last year Rory drove a green with a 2-iron. So on a par 4, it's certainly a longer hitter's dream course here. We talked a little bit about it last week, kind of similar layout, kind of a similar field, with the WGC event being the top 50. So tough field, tough leaderboard. I don't particularly love the board much this week. I'm not going to have too much from an outright perspective here.
Yeah, there's just kind of a little bit of a weird course with it being at elevation. So it's like 73, 74 yards on the scorecard, but the effective yardage of it's like 67 to 6,800 because of the elevation. Plus, you add in the fact that the course tends to play very firm, so it plays very short. And I tend to have a little bit less exposure this week, and it might sound like a weird reason, but when you have an event at altitude, it brings a little bit different amount of variance into the game, because if you're sitting 150 yards out any other day in the PGA Tour, the guys know how far that shot's going, right? And you all of a sudden now go to 7,000 feet of an altitude, and you're having to calculate stuff, right? So that 150 may now be 133. But that 133-yard shot might not actually be that based upon how high you hit the shot. Because you'll hear this probably mentioned on the telecast at some point this week. It depends on the player's apex. And by apex, I mean how high a player hits the ball. The higher you hit the ball, the
No kidding.
further, the bigger the difference is going to be in altitude adjustment. So if you have a guy who hits the ball, let's say Rory with it's a moonshot pitching wedge, it's going to have a larger effect than a guy who flights it down, right? Or if you hit the shot into the wind, right? The
Right.
altitude isn't affected as much, and that just makes it like a guessing game with the irons. So the other reason why you've seen bombers do well here isn't necessarily because they can drive the greens. It's because where they decide to hit their drivers, which are a mile in the air, they go even further because of that, and it
Yeah.
leaves them a shot or into the green where they don't have to worry about altitude, right? Other guys, let's say, here's a good example. You and I both are not Webb Simpson truthers, but we tend to go towards Webb because he's got a really good all-around game, and he's good wedge player, good iron player. Keeps it in playoffs.
Accurate driver. Yeah.
Accurate driver, right? But the thing is, if Webb's sitting back there at 115 yards because he just played for position, and let's say Rory McIlroy drove it to 30 yards. Now, on a normal course, the difference in a 30-yard tough chip shot and 110 yards middle of the fairway wedge may not be that big. But here, when the 110-yard shot is that much harder to judge, the difference between that and a 30-yard shot is massive. And that's why you see a lot of these guys pull driver on holes they may not normally hit it. Like the second hole here is like 370-yard dogleg right, where if this was a normal course, guys would just hit it to the corner and leave themselves a wedge. But they're just playing uber aggressive because they realize they're going to have to make birdies, and it's a heck of a lot easier doing it.
And it separates those guys too that can fly those trees. It's pretty heavily tree lined if I remember, and it gives those guys even more of an advantage that can fly those trees because Webb Simpson can't fly those trees, so he's even laying back even further than what these guys are. It's not like he's hitting driver to 70 yards and they're driving it onto the green. He's laying way back, and he's got
like 110,
yeah, he's got shots into greens, which just like you said, just makes it so much tougher on guys like that. So. I don't want to call it a gimmicky event, but it's a fun event to watch. It's great to watch, but it's not an event that I like to bet so much. There are some big numbers out here. I remember last year guys made some big numbers. They get hung up in those trees, try to make some hero shots because you are going to have to make some birdies. But these guys at the top that can bomb it and hit, like you said, have pretty high apex, have a pretty good advantage here.
Yeah, so like my strategy for the week, so kind of normal week, I'll have like 1 unit total out there at risk for outright. So whenever I play this event, I'm gonna play a little bit less pre-flop, meaning before the event starts. So I'll probably have about half a unit invested right now across 3 players, and I'm gonna wait to have the other half unit used for in play because we've seen here in the past where a guy could shoot even 1 under the first day. Let's say if Dustin Johnson goes out and shoots 1 under the first day and he's 6 shots back. He's gonna all of a sudden be 23, 25 to 1 to win, and I'm more likely to add in a guy like that than I would pick someone 25 to 1 pre-flop now because I know he can get hot 3 rounds and still win the event.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to play this. Even look at guys that maybe had been striking really well or hitting the driver well. Guys with some lengths that maybe just didn't putt so well the first couple of days, and then you can go in and grab some guys that maybe get some putting variance back on their side.
Exactly. So what's one of your outrights that you bet so far this week, right?
I'm going to go back to the well with Scott. It's only like 16 or 18 to 1. The model likes him. He hits it far enough, I think, to compete here. He's a good ball striker. What drew me to him, we know that his ball striking is good. It's always been good. What kind of drew me to him last week was that, over the last couple of weeks and over the last couple of months, he's been putting really well, and his short game has gotten way better. That didn't bear out so much at Riviera. He kind of struggled, especially on some short putts. That is a tough course on short putts, one of the toughest on tour. But he did struggle a bit at first, but I think he gained 2 strokes putting in the last day, and he kind of kept, eventually righted the ship a little bit. It's not a play I'm in love with. It's a very small edge. I don't have it much different than that. Maybe 12 or 14 to 1. I think it should be lined. So if you can get 18 to 1, great. I think I got 16 to 1. It's like I said, it's just kind of like a model play. I just think that he should maybe be just a tad higher. Maybe in that Webb range, kind of.
Yeah, that makes sense. So one of my plays this week is kind of a guy who's gone a little bit under the radar because he hasn't been talked about lately, and that's Gary Woodland. So if you look at like the player profile of Gary Woodland, he's kind of like a mini Dustin Johnson type player, right? He can hit the ball a mile. his overall game's pretty good. His weakness tends to be on the green, right, or sometimes around the green, and that's pretty much DJ.
Definitely.
And DJ's sitting here, at single digits, and Gary's up here at 7 times the odds. So I was able to grab him at 53-1 here. That's just too high of a number for a guy who, when he's in contention, wins golf tournaments.
He's really good on short courses too.
And he's really good on short courses. And he's
a
also
little
good at
lower.
elevation. I think he won an event, like the Reno Tahoe Open, I want to say, it's off the top of my head, maybe 6-7 years ago, or finished very high. I think he did win it. And that's the one that's up in Reno, which is at elevation too. So
his lower ball flight, I would assume, helps him quite a bit, like less adjustment, like you said, on iron shots as well, when he will have to hit wedges and iron shots.
Yeah, and the other thing is,
lower.
And then off the tee, he hits this little stinging iron that he can hit for absolute eternity. But he also has the ability, when needed, he can take driver and just hit moon shots and hit it 360 on this course.
Oh, yeah, if he wants to, for sure.
He has the ability to do both, and it's just a matter of how he's going to approach it, which my guess is what you see a lot of guys do is they're going to play semi-aggressive the first day and see where they're at in the leaderboard and then adjust accordingly. So you may see some guys on Saturday and Sunday, like if they're 6 shots back, they're just going to rip driver every hole and say, okay, I'm either finishing top 5 or 30th. But Woodland, he hasn't necessarily played well of late, but it's one of those, it's a numbers play. It's just too high of a number. He should be about 30-1 in my eyes, and I'm getting 53 for a guy. This is a field that's weaker than we had last week, all honesty, right?
That's what I said. I think the field might be a little bit weaker.
Yeah. And so, sure, Woodland's played this course event 3 times. He's finished like 17th, 50th, and 38th, so nothing great. But, Woodland kind of had a breakthrough last year, right? Winning the U.S. Open, playing really well the rest of the year, and it's just too high.
It's really just about his putting. Like, his ball striking is great. He's a top 10, even in this field. He's a top 10 guy ball striker. I think.
And the one thing I know about putting in this course, so the greens are fairly slopey, and they tend not to get and firm, but they're not going to get them quick. I would be surprised if they get past 11 and a half. And when that happens, that brings the entire field in putting-wise. And what I mean by that is the slower the greens, the less likelihood you are that you're going to, miss your putts by larger amounts, which means that it takes a little bit less skill to putt. The reason you see guys, such a big skill difference at Augusta all the time, because the green is so fast and so slopey, right? And you have to be putting well, otherwise you get exposed, and guys are going to 3-putt 6 times.
Yeah.
Here, you can kind of hit a putt, and okay, it's 3 feet by. Well, if you played somewhere else, it might be 5 feet by. So you can be a little bit more aggressive on the greens. Now, I know they have slope in them, and guys can still miss short putts, but and we've seen DJ win here twice, right?
Yeah.
And DJ's not a great putter, right? So if you have a bunch of 10-footers and you're not worried about ranning it, 6 feet by, some of those are probably going to go in a little bit more often.
All right, for sure. Is there anyone further down the board that you're grabbing? I mean, like with the shorter field, there's not crazy long odds. You're not going to
there's not crazy long odds. I had 2 other plays. One of them was a little bit higher. I'll leave that one for the subscribers at LukeSportsBetting.com. But you can find all of our bets every week. The only other play I had down below was Sunjay Im. I got it 75-1. It's just a numbers play there again. 75 is just too high for a guy that we're going to see win the PGA Tour at some time. I have his number closer to 45 in this field.
He gains strokes everywhere. Good putter.
Yeah, he's a guy who's just got a good overall game, and he's been in contention a bunch. And it's one of those. The field's only 72 guys with 45 guys that can realistically win this event, right? And Im didn't play great last week. He played good in the first round, and then kind of shit the bed on the second round, and he missed the cut on the number. And so that's the reason why we're getting such a bad number for him here.
Yeah.
I think
this is a guy we've seen in the 30s and 40s for like the last couple months. Right?
Exactly. And so now you're getting double the number. So I just kind of got to absorb the value. Do I think Sunjay Im wins this week? No. But it's another one where it's a value play, right? It's kind of like I talked about, like taking Siwoo Kim last week at 500-1, right? They're like, why take someone 500-1? Like, because his true odds are like 150-200, and in the middle of the second round, I'm getting texts all over the place saying Siwoo Kim 2 shots out of the lead at 500-1. I said, That's why you play him. He didn't win the event. He wasn't in contention on Sunday, but
if he were, I mean, you can always
here.
hedge off. Like if he's in a position, say like Scott Brown was, you can take Adam Scott live, and make money, right?
Exactly. Yeah. If you get Scott Brown, you can take 3 or 4 guys up there all around there because your investment on a guy that's 500 to 1 is like so minuscule that you can cash out a profit pretty easily.
For sure, for sure. Another guy I'm going. So I'm riding the Aussies, I guess, this week, which is kind of funny. I also bet him last week, but I'm going to take Leishman again at 50 to 1. He won the Farmers, which is also like kind of a driver-dependent course. Again, it's not a play that I'm in love. It's a very small edge, but these are my only 2 this week. That could actually keep up with driver off the tee with some of these guys. Leishman a little bit shorter than the Roys and DJs and probably even Scott, but he's just gained strokes everywhere. Kind of like you're saying with him, a little bit worse number. It should be. I think it should be closer in the 40s, maybe high 30s to 1 for Leishman. He's just been gaining strokes everywhere, and even last week, it wasn't a great showing, but he hung around, right? He didn't do anything too terrible. I think he shot 3 over on Sunday, which made it look a little worse than what it was. But he hung in there at Riv. He won the Farmers. I think that he could win here. Like you said, I don't expect him to win, but at 50 to 1, it's another one where we're seeing a guy at 30 to 1, even some 25 to 1s, over the last couple of weeks, and now he's at 50 to 1. Seems like quite a bit of a jump for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But have you looked at any matchups? Anything you're really liking?
Yeah, I played a total of 7 head-to-head matchups. A couple of them have gone a little bit under the radar in terms of some of the reasonings behind it. But did you have a chance to look at them at all or not?
Yeah, I just went through them this morning. I also went through some Puerto Rico Open matchups. You guys, can get them at elitesportsbetting.com, where you'll get all of Paulie's massive plays and my lower volume, plus Paulie's live stuff throughout the tournament, first round leader stuff, all that stuff. The one play I took, the biggest edge I had in my plays was Xander Schauffele plus 131 against JT. I think Thomas is the better golfer. He's had some success here as well. I just think the number's a little bit high. I think it should be closer to like in the 115 range. Xander hits the ball high, which, like you said, could hurt him from an iron perspective, but so does JT. Both these guys can flight it. They're very similar kind of approach golfers. But JT's, he competed to win at the Tournament Champions. He has struggled a little bit since. I think he has a 3rd place in there. He struggled a little bit last week. Xander's more of a variance play, right? Like Xander's a little bit more of like a steady golfer, and JT maybe has a better chance to win this event. But I think Xander, just on the pure variance alone, could probably, hang in there with JT over the long haul.
Yeah, and interesting enough, my biggest edge of the week is on a JT matchup as well, but on the opposite side of it is you. Surprise, surprise, we're a little bit opposite. So my biggest edge of the week is Justin Thomas minus 165 over Webb Simpson. So what we kind of talked about earlier in the show.
Well, yeah, I mean, I like Webb just from a golfer's perspective, but this is such a unique event that I don't necessarily disagree with you here.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so in terms of Thomas, historically, this is not, I'm not saying I'm a trend better or anything like that, but whenever Thomas tends to have a bad round or a bad event, he tends to bounce back. We've seen it before. So if we looked earlier in the year, right, he missed the cut at the Sony. His next event at the Phoenix Open, finishes 3rd. Last year, he misses the cut at the British Open, goes and wins the WGC St. Jude. So he's a very, very good bounce back player, to where we've seen him go finish near the bottom of the pack in a playoff event and then win the playoff event the next week. So whenever he has an issue, he tends to correct it quickly. And last week, he just seemed to be a little bit frustrated around the greens. And yeah. I think that's going to be a little bit, not as much of a worry this week on the slower greens. And, Riviera's greens were unbelievably fast last week, when you're considering all the slope that was there. So he now gets on a course where he's comfortable. He's played well here in the past.
Was the second year recently, right?
Yeah, he went 9th last year, lost in a playoff the year before, and 5th the year before that. Meanwhile, Webb is, struggling here, kind of like we expected. He's finished 39th and 37th the last 2 years. I think you're getting this matchup only because Webb won at Phoenix, right? And so he's a little bit overvalued in the market. Normally, you would never have the ability to take Webb Simpson against Justin Thomas because they wouldn't be close enough to Thomas, right? And so here's a little bit of background in terms
especially the WGC, right? You would see Thomas in these Rahm, Rory, DJ matchups.
So in terms of how the books usually do matchups, is they'll pick guys that are similarly priced odds to win the event and kind of toss them against each other, and they'll kind of throw a number out there, right? And see how that then gets adjusted in the market. So that's what you'll see a lot of, matchups close to around even money, maybe minus 120, plus 100, right? Because they're guys that are about the same odds to win an event, but doesn't mean they're the same odds to win the matchup, right? And we've talked about that in past shows.
Yeah.
Or some players a higher variant or a certain course fits. And this is just one where we're getting, Justin Thomas kind of on a downturn and Webb Simpson on an upturn. So the market's needs to be a bit adjusted probably here. And I have this true line over 200. I think Thomas wins this more than 2/3 of the time. So count me in at 165 with Thomas.
For sure. And you said you hadn't looked at the Puerto Rico Open yet. Is that right?
I did not. I did have one other match I want to cover for.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is one that really won't show up in any date anywhere, and it's not a massive edge, but it's definitely one to be using, and that's Billy Horschel plus 115 over Ben On. So Ben On just had a kid this past week, and so basically that you have him now traveling to Mexico. So my guess is that his game's going to be a little bit rusty because he probably has other things focused on his mind, and that's enough for me to where I'm getting Horschel and On rate out as similar players to me in terms of long-term form. So if there wasn't this extra variable, I'd have Horschel probably as a small favorite. I'm getting plus 115 on Horschel, who should be a small favorite, plus the fact that On might be a little bit rusty. I'm getting probably about a 35% edge here, so I'm going to be playing Horschel over On.
Yeah, I actually have a small edge on Horschel as well. And now that you talked about the kid thing, I'm thinking about it. The only thing that drew me away is that, Horschel's pretty short off the tee, but recently he's kind of had a little bit of resurgence, right? And even at 90-1, it seems a little bit crazy. He's gaining strokes in every aspect of the game. So, and On has been very up and down as of late. So, I actually do agree with you on that play there. So yeah, that's about it. Look out for our plays. We'll see. I put some matchups out there for the Puerto Rico Open. I'm waiting for some markets open for the outrights. I don't know if I'll end up playing anything yet, but there's definitely some guys that I want to play. I'm just kind of waiting for the right number. So yeah, just check us out on elitesportsbetting.com where you get all of our stuff. We're 3 out of 4 now. Last 4 events. And was 4 out of 4.
And the 1 week could have been 4 out of 4 because last week before Rib at Pebble had 2 of the top 3 heading into Sunday on my card. So that could have been the old alternating win. I win, you win. I win, you win.
Yep.
Would be great. If we do that all year long, that'll be great. We can actually retire.
Yeah, I mean, I would hate winning every other event. I would
hate having 20 to 25 wins apiece when we're picking 3-4 guys a week. So
all right, so it's your turn now. So you get one this week, and then I'll get next week.
Okay, sounds good. Gary Woodland for the W here, then, right? So, okay. Thanks for tuning in for this edition of the Up and Down. We'll be back next week with another edition. If you have any questions about any of the bets, feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. And you can check out all of our bets on elitesportsbetting.com.